Welcome back to the Elliott. Today we're going to talk about an age-old problem, that is having water in your bilge. Now you might say, well gosh, that's what bilge pumps are for, but unfortunately bilge pumps sit about 1.5 inches at least above the bottom, and so if you get any residual water in there from washing the boat, your lazarette kind of letting water in, or you've got fishing pole holders like we have that actually the caps on them don't seal very well and let water in. We even had our shower sump back up because once we had the float switch die and the second time we had the bilge pump die. Now why is it a big deal? A little bit of water in the bilge, no big deal? It is, because that's where mildew starts and all kinds of different things that, it makes the boat musty, it creates condensation. That's where you start getting things like mildew in mattresses. You don't want that in your boat. So today we're going to see if we can solve that problem with this new product that just came out from Seaflow, and it's called a dry bilge system. You can make these things DIY yourself. Once you see how we install it, we'll point you to some links of some folks that did that. You can buy this system that it's really pretty reasonable. We'll put a link down below. And then there are other systems that have been out there for quite some time, but they're like almost $1,000. They're kind of insanely expensive. So when we saw this, it was so reasonable, we thought we'd give it a shot. Come along, we'll show you how it goes in and whether or not the thing even works. Join us on the Elliott as we realize our 5-year plan with the kids. Grown up, moved out, graduated from college. We take the dog, sold everything, and kitted out the boat so we can cruise the Pacific Northwest, all while living and working in the heart of Seattle. Alright, I'm going to bust open the box, but just to start with, this thing, it has very low gallon per minute flow. So we're talking like 0.3 gallons per minute. This is not meant to be a bilge pump. It is meant to just soak up the water, that last little water that sits in the bottom of your bilge and causes mold, mildew, and all kinds of stinky type stuff. It only draws about 5.5 amps. It runs on 12 volt DC, so it's pretty slick setup. To begin with, this is the bilge pump, and it has a timer on it, so you can set a timer as to when you want this thing to run during the day. Supposedly you can set it up to 16 different times. We'll see how that goes. The other thing that's interesting about it, it doesn't come with a float switch, which kind of stinks. So it's just going to run every day, or you can set up a timer on it a couple times weekly or whatever you want to do. But I'd much rather have a float switch than the way that it comes. Like I said, internal as the bilge pump. This is the inlet of where the water gets sucked out of your bilge, and this is the outlet of where it's going to get pumped overboard. We're going to have this go into one of our shower sumps so that it just collects in there, and the shower sump will pump it overboard for us, so we don't have to put a new through hole in the side of the boat, because I'm not a big fan of drilling new holes in my boat. What else comes in this kit? We have a little 1/4 inch hose that will go right into that inlet we see there. It's a good deal of it, so we've got some good run that we can put at the bottom of the bilge pump collector. We can get it right where we need it, where we have the most water. There's also a switch that comes with it. It's pretty straightforward. It has auto. When it's switched to auto, that means that the timer will be activated, and then it also has an off and a manual. So if you just want to push the manual switch to be able to dry the bilge out, you can do that as well. But this is the money piece right here. So it's difficult to see, but it probably weighs about 12 ounces. It's pretty heavy, which is good. So it can sit on the bottom on the inside and be weighted. It has a 1/4 inch inlet, probably what you use for an ice maker. In fact, our ice maker has about that same size inlet, and it screws right into this block and has this suction hole here. Now this is where you're able to kind of get the last drop out of your bilge, and it's these little sponges, and these sponges just get stuffed right in here on the bottom, and when they sit on the bottom of your hull, water sucks into it. When this thing runs, it just sucks the last of that water out. At least that's what they advertise. Now the cool part is they come with some extra sponges, which is nice. We'll put those over here. And then it has some instructions as well. Oh, one last piece that's in the box is this filter. So all of you that have had boats or have boats, you're familiar with the fact that the bilge can have just a bunch of stuff floating around in there. If there's scum in the bilge, that'll get sucked up into this as well, and that'll clog the whole system up, and it's not going to work. It'll probably blow your fuse. And so it has this little inline filter that you'll have to clean out from time to time to stop this system from getting clogged. So that's pretty cool as well. The one last thing that I'm going to add to this is we had a piece of starboard that I had cut. It's 9 inches by 15 inches. Had it nicely trimmed around the edges. We had Tap Plastics, which is right down the street from us, that does a lot of custom plastic type work. Just asked them to have them make this for us. This piece, I think it cost us like 25 bucks. Not cheap, but not that expensive either. We'll mount this to a structural pole down in the engine room, but it gives it a nice surface for the pump to be able to mount to. Now, I said that something that is missing on this that I didn't like. So there are other systems, the Arid system, that are out there for dry bilge. Like I said, they cost upwards of almost $1,000. If you have multiple pickups, they get even more expensive, into the multi-$1,000 area. And so we're going to put in a water witch. So this is an electronic float switch, so it doesn't have any mechanical parts to fail, and I'm going to wire that into the 3-wire setup on this bilge pump. So instead of just running this timer, we're going to run this float switch as well, and we're going to just bolt this float switch right to the side of this float. We'll show you how that goes together, but that way it'll be nice and low in the bilge. These 2 contacts will pick up the water, tell the bilge pump to turn on, and we'll be able to suck up all the rest of the water in here. This thing, I'll put a link in as well. They're less than $100, which is kind of expensive for a float switch, but 7-year warranty, doesn't draw that much power. And the nice part is now we don't just have to use a timer. In fact, I'm probably not even going to use the timer feature. I'm just going to let this float switch kick on, and I think it's a much more elegant solution. My bilge on the Elliott, it's a silly setup. I think a lot of them are this way. It has multiple bilge pumps. It has a front, it has a mid, and it has a stern bilge pump. The problem is it has fiberglass built blocks that the bilge pumps sit on, and they are about 1.5 to 2 inches a piece. So what will happen is if you get water leakage in the front of the boat or the mid or the stern, the water is basically trapped in these 3 sections when we talk about that last little bit of water that sits in the hull. In our boat, it is the midship and it is the stern that all of the water sits in. So while this is cool, there's only one of them. And guess what? I can't get Seaflow to sell me one of these parts, or I would just put in a little split manifold and I would put 2 of these in 2 sections of the hull, and it would keep everything nice and dry. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of a homegrown job to create another one of these. So let me show you what I did. So right here, this is a cable plate that you just get at the hardware store. What we're going to do with this cable plate, we're going to take this this barb, and it's a perfect size. It's 1/8 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch. And we're going to bolt that through, and we're going to be able to take our 1/4 inch piping and be able to put that right onto that. And this is basically just replicating the same type of a setup. A little, again, homegrown. So what we'll do here is I have a couple of these. It's funny, I found these at the hardware store. They are called zinc plated sealing flanges. I have no idea what they're for. But I do know for certain that if I bolt these through these holes, they'll fit nicely. And I've got some stainless screws and such, and I can put one on each side, and we'll just put this together and kind of show you how we do a homemade one of these. And it will cost us $17.50, and that includes Washington sales tax. So if you don't have tax in your state, winner winner chicken dinner for you. So let's put this together. So we're all done with our homemade suction block. Because of the zinc plates, it's nice and weighted. It's not quite as heavy as this is. I'd say it's probably like 8 ounces instead of 12 ounces. This is a barb instead of a press in for the 1/4 inch, but it'll fit quite nicely. I'm just going to use the sponges that come with the C-Flow setup, and I just use a brass connector underneath this. I'll probably go get an O-ring that sits underneath here so we make sure that it doesn't leak at all. But I think we're in a pretty good spot. And the beauty of this with this plate is these sponges fit right between the base of those 2 zinc pieces, so it sits right in there. It's actually probably even more elegant than what came from the factory. That is my homemade dry bilge pickup. Kind of proud of myself. We'll have to see if it actually works though. One additional part that I forgot to mention is there is a T that we'll basically splice from the intake from the dry bilge pump from C-Flow, and we will branch it off into our 2 pickups. And so that's going to be, hopefully that'll serve as a manifold and we get good even suction from that. I don't know, you probably have some fluid dynamic engineers that are watching this, and you're probably either shaking your head or saying yes, that'll work just fine. So I guess we'll find out together. So we're looking at how we're going to put this together. My initial thinking was that I was just going to drill a hole in this particular pickup block and just have the water witch sit there on it. What I'm decided that we're going to do is we're going to take some of this 3M VHB tape, very high bond tape. This stuff is amazing. You can get wet, it won't give way. It's amazing stuff. Basically all the emblems on your car, all those types of things, it's held on by this, and once it sets up, it has very high bond. We're going to basically put that on the side of this, and we're going to mount this right next to this block, and it'll give me an opportunity to keep these 2 contacts. When they connect, when water goes across the 2 of them, the switch will turn on basically. So I'm going to put it probably, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch higher than the bottom of this, so we don't get a false turn on. The nice part about this water witch as well, I think it has a 3-second delay on it, so it doesn't get any falses, and keeps running the pump as well. It actually has to have water sitting in there. So I think, again, this should work out pretty well, but we'll find out. So we'll put this together now. So this very high bond 3M tape, it sets up, takes a little bit of time, so we're just going to let it set for the evening, and then we will start this project tomorrow morning. But again, it stands up well to water, and if it does become a problem and it falls off, it's not that big of a deal. I'll end up drilling the block and connecting it that way. But I do think this is probably a better alignment where I want this to be, so we're going to give this a shot the first time. So for those of you that hate little black boxes as much as I do, I crack this open. Here's the timer and the cover on the front that snaps down nice and tight. There's the low volume bilge pump that can run dry. It's actually got pretty good insulation in it to keep it quiet. We'll have to see in reality just how quiet that really is. That is the input, and then the output that just is mounted on the bottom of the box. And if you were to do it a DIY, just buy a box, throw a bilge pump in there and a timer, probably do this all by yourself. But I'm all for spending $150 and getting a 4-year warranty on this C-Flow system. So to me, it's a good deal.
Before we install the dry bilge system, we need to clean out the bilge, which is kind of gross.
Start at the bow and work our way back.
That's gross, huh?
Yeah, there's a ton of shit in the front here.
It's hard to get to.
Yeah, there's a squirrel in there. And there you go. One clean forward bilge. Now we just have to work our way back. So here's an example of this bilge pump And it sits on this block, putting it about 2 inches higher than the bilge. And that's kind of a hard thing to see here. But the frustrating part is, if you look down through the bilge here, you can see why that would be a problem if it sits higher. It just gives that opportunity for all that nastiness to grow that we're cleaning up.
Okay, this is under the bed, which could be contributing to the mattress that we had before, why it got all moldy.
All right, after we clean the bilge, like we've got this midsection area, we're spraying Wet and Forget Outdoor on this. It's an antifungal. Gets rid of mold, mildew, and algae, which is perfect to be able to apply to this. And it doesn't smell like bleach or anything. It's just an antifungal like what you put in a swimming pool. And when it dries, every time it gets wet, it activates and it'll kill mold, mildew. Right that, I gotta probably pry it out.
We got lucky.
Yeah, thank sweet Jesus that there's an access here underneath the bed, because I thought this was a dead spot and we were gonna have to, I don't know how we were gonna clean underneath there. So that has to come out, and the problem is, I don't think it's ever been out. I know it might not look clean, but that's just the paint that's peeled back from the resin because it was damp, but that is now clean underneath our master in the stateroom. So here we are in the engine room where we've mounted this up. The starboard, just a through bolt, and you'll see here's the timer. This is the switch that came with it. It has a 15 amp breaker, which is kind of funny because it asks for a 10 amp fuse. Interesting. We can run it manually, or we can put it on auto. And when it's on auto, it will run when the timer is ready to roll. I need to pick up a couple diodes because I'm going to put the float switch, the electronic float switch on this as well. We've got that all mounted up. Now it's time to do the plumbing side of the house. And we will put that all down. This will be the pickup. The bilge will go down in here. It's kind of mid-bilge. It's where this boat tends to hold its water. Alright, check it out. Just seeing which one, if they work, of this manifold setup. I'm pretty pleased. And the first time we did it, my homemade one actually drew more water, but there we go. Now that we've tested both of the pickups and we know they work, we've installed them, and this is the plumbing tee that acts as a manifold between the two of them. This is the SureFlow pickup unit that came with the kit. It has the Water Witch electronic float switch next to it, and this is positioned in the section of the bilge that is at the stern of the boat. This is where our hot water tank, if it has any overflow, will be. Any intrusion that we get from our fishing pole holders, anything that comes in through the hole, it generally goes into the stern. So that's why we decided to put the electronic switch back here. And there is the homemade unit sitting mid-hole. Here we have everything plumbed into the bottom of the unit. Here's the filter that goes into the intake, and then the output. And I ran the output with a clear hose and ran it back where the sump terminates in the master statement. I'll show you that. Here's where I ran the output from the engine room in the master suite. So that's our shower sump that it's plumbed into, and it works quite nicely as it fills up. Here's the sump run.
Yep.
Cool, huh?
Nice. Good job, baby.
And now we have a dry bilge. So what'd you think of that project?
That was a lot. I'm gonna wash the bilge off of me. Glad we got the carpets back down.
And hopefully less stink.
Yeah, it's gonna be less stinky.
And we don't have stink. But now we're gonna have less.
Be less stinky.
You should get less stinky.
That's true.